Hello and welcome. I'm Nayanthara Rai. You're watching a special show here on ET Now. Motown celebrates the 7-month-long ban on larger diesel cars in the National Capital Region today came to an end. The Supreme Court has withdrawn the ban on registration of cars of 2000 cc and more. That's after it imposed such a ban in December of last year, and that's after a surge in the pollution level in the national capital. This ban followed once the WHO came out with a report saying Delhi is the most polluted city in the world. But it's not a full free hand that's been given out to car makers. There is a caveat, which is that an additional green cess of 1% on the ex-showroom price will have to be deposited by the automaker or the dealers that are selling these larger diesel cars. That's of course to compensate for environmental damage. And it's a 1% additional cess that in all likelihood is going to be passed on to the consumers. To discuss this more, we are now joined by Vikram Kirloskar, the Vice Chairman of Toyota Kirloskar. He's joining us live. Also on the phone line, we're going to be joined by Mohan Parasaran. He was a counsel for Mercedes that had actually moved the Supreme Court in the first place with this proposal of a 1% green cess. We're also going to be joined on the phone line by Pravin Shah. He's the President and Chief Executive of the Automotive Division of M&M. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on ET Now. Mr. Kirloskar, I'm going to come to you first. You know, we saw a ban that had been put in place in the National Capital Region that not just includes Delhi, but also includes parts of Uttar Pradesh and Haryana coming into place in December. It had been described as a deadly blow, a death blow, in fact, by the auto industry. What is this going to mean for auto sales? Okay, I think we're having a little technical problem connecting with Mr. Kirloskar. So let me go across to Mr. Pravin Shah of M&M. You know, M&M, Mr. Shah, was affected so badly by this entire order. At that time, all of your vehicles were 2000 cc plus. So this is a massive relief that's coming in for the industry and to M&M. We saw your stock price also surge in trade today. How do you see this 1% additional levy being played out? What does it mean for you as an automaker? Is it going to have any impact at all on sales, you think?
Frankly speaking, it's a long-pending issue which should have been resolved earlier. But we are happy to see that there is some end to the long-pending case has been resolved and the ban has been lifted. So, of course, is subject to 1% levy of the cess. However, I think the industry should be happy because at least the uncertainty in terms of the ban has come to an end. So that's a good news so far as industry is concerned. So far as Mahindra is concerned, of course, we also welcome the outcome and the decision. However, the levy of cess is as what we understand. It's still the time the case is finally heard. That's what as I understand. I haven't have had an opportunity to hear the full or read the full verdict.
Okay, so so you're saying that obviously this is something that is being welcomed by the industry. It's great news coming in for M&M as well. But Pravin Shah, are you going to pass on this entire cost to the consumers? I'm asking you this because while we have seen sales pick up, you cannot say a full-blown recovery is very much in place. So what does a company like M&M plan to do? Pass on the entire additional 1% cost to the consumer, or do you think you're going to absorb some of it? Could we perhaps also see prices go up?
Well, 1% cess is to be paid at a showroom price, so surely it will be charged to the customer, as what I understand. The point of levy is on the showroom price.
Okay, now I'm going to bring in Vikram Kirloskar into this conversation. Hi, Mr. Kirloskar. We had a technical glitch, so you couldn't hear the first question I was asking you. I want to first get your reaction. I'm sure the entire auto industry is very relieved that there is clarity on this entire issue now, do you anticipate consumers going out and actually buying larger diesel cars in the National Capital Region, or do you suspect they're going to hang on and perhaps wait and see if there's going to be further orders that are going to come out from the Supreme Court?
Vehicle is the Innova, and I think people are going to go out and buy it. It is very popular all around Delhi. People from Punjab, people from UP, etc. are bringing it into Delhi when they come to visit Delhi. And I think we have a demand for that. We'll see the demand come back and the sales resume.
Okay, so you think the sales are going to resume? People are going to go out and start buying SUVs and larger diesel cars. But, you know, in the last 7 months, Mr. Kirloskar, what did you see? Did you see a preference towards petrol cars? Did you see that people had just stopped buying, waiting for clarity? What kind of trends did you notice?
Well, in the Innova range and the Fortuner range, we did not have a petrol. So we didn't, you can't say that whether people wanted petrol or people didn't want petrol. Definitely on our smaller cars, on the Corolla and on the Ethos, we did see some preference, some change in the ratios between petrol and diesel. There were a little more people buying petrol cars. But our vehicles that we make, ours and I think all my competitors, currently they are Euro 4 standard or Bharat Stage 4, which is a very clean and efficient engine. We are going to go to Bharat Stage 6 in 2 years, but even Stage 4 is pretty damn good, okay? So, and it's fuel efficient, it's quiet, it's clean, it doesn't smell, it's excellent. So I think people will get back to these vehicles. Diesels in the larger cars have some inherent competitiveness, which I think people recognize and they appreciate, and therefore they'll still continue to buy them.
Okay, I was actually not just asking for trends when it came to your company, but for the auto company, all the auto companies. Did you see a trend going towards petrol? Because there was at one time a preference for diesel cars simply because of the diesel being cheaper than petrol.
Yes, there has been some change. Like I said, in the smaller vehicles, the trend has been that we are selling a lot more petrol than we used to. It's a few percentage, 5 or 10% more on the movement towards petrol. But you see, we are also as a country committed to the carbon regime in Paris, whatever that Paris COP22 regulation is concerned. And without having clean diesel vehicles, it's going to be difficult to meet. All fossil fuels will have some kind of emission issues. But, we have to balance between carbon, nitrogen, and particulates. By the time we reach stage 6 in 2020, we will need diesel fuel along with the Bharat Stage 6 emission requirements so that we can meet the carbon commitments that we have made. So I think diesel is important. The different kind of vehicle buyers are buying diesel. People who travel long distance, people who are using it for the taxi business where it's a lot of continuous travel. So looking at all this, I don't discount diesel in the future.
And Mr. Kirloskar, like you said, the Innova and Fortuner are popular models in the National Capital Region. Can you give us a little idea of how much more expensive these cars are going to get with that 1% additional cess? If you've done the math.
Well, it'll be 1% more, so 1% on, 18, 20 lakhs, yeah. It's going to be that much.
Yeah.
10, 15,000 rupees,
okay.
20,000 rupees more.
So it's not a deal breaker as such. You don't think it's going... But, the question I was getting at was, the buyers for the Fortuner and the Innova are obviously of a certain economic bracket, but when you look at other models, other SUVs in the cheaper bracket, do you think it could become it could come in the way because you still don't have full recovery when you talk about auto sales?
Well, the new Innova that we are selling is far more efficient, fuel efficient. The mileage is better than the older Innova. So I guess a little more money for it is going to give you a benefit. See, as we go towards global regulation, as we go towards Euro 6, global safety standards, whatever other global regulations that you come, it is going to cost the automakers more. And so the prices of vehicles are going to increase. That's a given. I don't think there's going to be much choice on that. So I think we have to just live with that.
I'm going to ask you to hang on, Mr. Kirloskar. At this juncture, I'm going to bring in Mohan Parasaran into this conversation. Mr. Parasaran was in fact the co-counsel for Mercedes that had moved the application in the Supreme Court seeking a lift on the ban and suggested and mooted this entire proposal of a 1% additional green cess. Mr. Parasaran, you've secured a favorable verdict from the Supreme Court allowing the registration of diesel vehicles in the NCR. I was asking Vikram Kirloskar this, and he's of the view that it is safe for all consumers to start going out and buying larger diesel cars. You were there in Supreme Court arguing for Mercedes today. You got that verdict. Do you believe it's safe for consumers to go out and start buying these bigger cars?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any problem because the Supreme Court was very keen that insofar as diesel vehicles of the capacity of 2000 cc and more, they should actually recognize the fact that they are actually a source for some sort of a pollution, even though the car manufacturers did deny that they aren't actually, they are taking all safety precautions and they are complying with the strictest standards under the Motor Vehicles Act and the rules. But the court said that actually you should actually, as a token, do something. And the car manufacturers, particularly Mercedes-Benz, actually came out with a voluntary offer to deposit 1% called as the environmental protection charge as a temporary measure till the Supreme Court finally decides the issue. And in fact, a request was made that this was to be only as an interim measure and the Supreme Court should increase the rates at a future date. The Chief Justice said we can't be doing it and keep the swords hanging on the head of people. Let them first start. This is a starting point. And therefore, I don't think there's going to be any sort of a fear which is going to be caused as a consequence of the Supreme Court order. The Supreme Court is more concerned about the environmental impact and at the same time wanted to balance the interests of the car manufacturers as well as the consumers.
Mr. Parasaran, you just said this is a starting point. Can you elaborate on that? Starting point for what? A starting point for a possible higher green levy? What exactly do you mean by that?
Starting point is it might cover other vehicles as well. See, they actually indicated that actually they will also make this levy applicable to even possibly vehicles with a lesser engine capacity and also possibly levy it for other types of vehicles as well.
Okay, I want to come in here. This is very crucial what you're saying. So I just want to make sure there's no confusion. You're saying that it's on the table. The Supreme Court may consider a proposal to have a similar green cess, whether it's 1% or whatever level it is, on smaller diesel cars as well as petrol cars?
Smaller diesel vehicles, possibly even petrol vehicles, and make this as a sort of a measure which can continue in the longer run, unless and until actually the court also decides the governmental objection that the court has no jurisdiction to issue such levies from a constitutional perspective.
Okay, I'm just going to come to what the government's view is. I want to go back to Vikram Kirloskar on the point that Mohan Parasaran was just making. Mr. Kirloskar, you just heard what Mohan Parasaran said, that it is very much on the table for the Supreme Court to deliberate and decide on whether a similar levy should be imposed on smaller diesel cars as well as on petrol cars. What is this going to mean for the automakers?
Well, I wasn't in courts today, so I don't know exactly what the Supreme Court said. I only was little clear that the 2000 cc and above vehicles have been allowed to be sold. But whatever they do now to next year or whatever, I think it's something which cannot go beyond 2020 when Bharat Stage 6 comes in. When Bharat Stage 6 comes in, we will be reaching pretty much global levels of emission requirements. We'll also be reaching meeting all the demands of the various stakeholders in the environmental area and the various stakeholders in public, various stakeholders in government. All of that we'll be meeting. So I think whatever issues that are going to happen on the vehicle industry regarding emission and regarding any cess or any deposit of money
No,
with
Mr.
the
Kirloskar,
court.
just to interrupt you there, I know you weren't in court today. Mr. Kirloskar, sorry to interrupt you. I know you weren't there in court today, but Mr. Parasaran was. He was the one who was arguing for Mercedes. That's why I'm asking you. He has just said that the Supreme Court can consider and is considering a proposal on petrol cars as well as smaller diesel cars. 2020, it's still some time away. So what I'm asking is, in the interim, if you do have an additional levy that's coming in, what is it going to mean for automakers? Do you think it's just the kind of thing consumers didn't need today? You still don't have full-blown recovery?
I have not heard anything about any levy or any objection to petrol cars until now. Whatever we have been discussing has been on diesel cars. So in case they do come back with a similar levy on the smaller cars or all across diesel cars, I will not be surprised. I don't know when it will happen. It's already taken 8.5 months to decide to come to this position. Maybe it will take another 8 or 9 months to come to the next position.
Okay, so that's Vikram Kirloskar saying he will not be surprised if we see a similar levy on petrol cars. Mr. Parasaran, I'm going to come back to you today. You were the one we've got who was in court, in Supreme Court. What was the government's position today? Did they agree with this 1% cess? In the past, the government has said that it's not up to anyone outside of the legislation to decide on such levies and taxes.
The government has already filed the intervention application. The Attorney General actually argued on the last occasion that the power to levy a cess or a tax is exclusively a sovereign power and does not lie within the ambit of anybody else other than the government. And it has to be done by the legislature or the parliament after a decision is taken by the executive. And the courts can't actually impinge upon that power. And the court was not inclined to hear that at this stage. They said they will hear the government at a later point of time.
Okay, so the government has already moved their intervention applications. It's going to be interesting to see what happens on that front. Mr. Parasaran, you also have a situation now, thanks to this 1% additional levy, where the coffers of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana are going to get richer, but that's of course with the imposition of this green cess. My question is that why will other states not follow suit? Do you think other states are also going to come out with a green cess, considering the Supreme Court has allowed it?
Yeah, naturally, I think that's the trend that's happening now, no?
So you do feel that there is going to be cascading impact and it's only a matter of time before other states also start imposing such levies?
As of now, the Supreme Court order only applies to the NCR. And since the order is passed by the Supreme Court, being the apex court, possibly the other jurisdictions also can follow the order passed by the Supreme Court.
Pravin Shah, are you concerned that post the imposition of this cess in the NCR, this is going to become a national exercise, that other states are going to join in, they're going to want to introduce a similar cess as well? And then what is that going to mean for companies like M&M?
Well, actually, I think today the case was heard for the Delhi NCR, where the ban was, as things stands today. So I would say that actually the ban has been removed. So surely the sentiments, which was not so good for diesel, surely will change and change for better.
What about you, Vikram Kirloskar? What do you think? You've already said you will not be surprised if we see an additional cess, a green cess being imposed on petrol cars. Do you think other states are going to join in and start introducing such environmental cesses?
No, first I said I don't think there's anything on petrol on the cards. So I don't expect anything on petrol cars.
Okay, sorry,
It
I
may
thought you
happen
said the
for
other thing.
smaller size diesel cars. I'm not sure. The court has said that they will look at it later. No. I said petrol has not been mentioned in this whole case at all. It's only been diesel which has been the fuel that has been mentioned. So kindly correct that. I won't be surprised if it goes across the other states, but I hope it doesn't. Again, the same reason what our lawyer friend said, that this is really the government's jurisdiction. I mean, it's the government's prerogative whether to apply a green tax or not. And this year in the finance budget, Mr. Jaitley, the finance minister, has put in a green tax. It's already there, 3 or 4%, something is already there. This is just an addition. It is really the government's right to do that, and I hope that's the way it's looked at across the rest of the country.
Okay, so you're hoping the other states are not going to join in, and I apologize for thinking that you had said that you will not be surprised if petrol cars are going to be also seeing a similar fate. Mr. Parasaran, coming back to you, we have the GST being targeted now for rollout on the 1st of April 2017. Now you have this 1% additional cess that's coming into play in the NCR. How is all of this going to be reconciled with the GST rollout?
Yeah, that will be a larger issue because under the GST, all cesses or taxes levied are actually subsumed in the GST. Therefore, once if they are subsumed, possibly the arguments of the manufacturers will be is that all these taxes, including cesses levied through the court, are also deemed to be subsumed under the GST.
Come in here, Vikram Kirloskar. What are your views? Are you think it's going to become messy before the rollout of the GST?
Well, I don't know how technically I'm not a tax expert, but I hope it gets subsumed in the GST. That's what it's meant to be. But let's look at this judgment in a little different manner. Really, the whole focus. I think overall the focus on the environment, and perhaps we have been the ones who've been hit first, the big car makers, is perhaps in the right direction. We need to control our environment. As a company, as an individual, I believe this is the right direction. Now, cars and vehicles are the ones which have been touched upon first. I hope this action goes towards all the areas of environmental issues, all the areas, all the different products, different sources of pollution in Delhi. Okay, if those are attacked with the same zeal as the diesel vehicles above 2 liters have been stopped, I think it will make a big difference in Delhi. So my hope is that this kind of work goes across all sources of pollution. We go in a direction that we want a clean environment. We as car makers, I can speak for myself, and I know Mahindra and the other car makers as well. My friend Pravin is here. All of us are trying very hard to to improve our technology on our products so that we meet the latest emission levels. We are also working hard in our manufacturing areas where we reduce pollution levels there and come to zero emission levels there. We are working through our supply chain, through our dealer network, making them all comply with the top environmental standards. We are interested in environment. I hope they look at all the other areas of pollution, and we go after that with the same zeal as we have gone with the automobile industry.
When you talk about other sources of pollution, Mr. Kirloskar, when you talk about other sources of pollution, I'm guessing you would also be talking about two-wheelers and trucks that are such a large contributor to the pollution in the national capital region. Do you think the automakers can also be faulted for the fact that they failed to highlight this entire issue in the Supreme Court? There has been a lot of criticism on that perhaps the automakers weren't, eloquent enough and they didn't put forth this argument as strongly as they should have.
Well, I think we tried to show technically with data from IIT Kanpur what are the different sources of pollution and how little all the automobiles contribute towards it. Okay, so when I say other source of pollution, I'm talking of right from power plants to burning of fields to this cement. There's so many other things which are causing pollution in Delhi. The vehicular pollution, and I'm talking across all vehicles, is not the largest contributor. I think we have to attack all areas. In tandoors, I don't know what the emission level of a tandoor is in terms of particulate matter and in terms of CO2, in terms of NOx, etc. But pollution comes from all kinds of sources. We should attack them in the same level as we have attacked the pollution sources in the auto industry, so that we get a clean Delhi and then start learning the best practices across the country as well.
Okay, Mr. Kirloskar, Pravin, Shah, as well as Mohan Parasaran, gentlemen, I thank you for joining us here on this ET Now special. We're running out of time, but we're going to leave you with Maruti Suzuki Chairman R.C. Bhargav, who told ET Now earlier that he believes the move is going to restore parity between diesel and petrol vehicles. Listen in.
Well, we were never affected by the 2-liter and above ban, but we were impacted to an extent that the sentiment was moving away from diesel to petrol, because we do have an investment made in diesel capacity. But what this will do is to again restore the parity between diesel and petrol. It's not going to make too much of a difference to us either way, actually.
Well, that's the chairman of the country's largest automaker believing we're finally going to see some parity between diesel and petrol car sales. With that, we're completely out of time, so we have to wrap up this special edition on ET Now Diesel Delight. Thanks for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.